In a move that surprises exactly nobody who has been paying any sort of attention, members of the gender-critical movement have fallen in love with Elon Musk's GROK, a machine that's best known around the world for undressing photos of non-consenting women, and even children. Because of course they would. The gender-critical movement is made primarily of creeps and predators, so it's only natural for them to love the literal child sexual abuse machine, as we'll see today. Just a heads up, I will be talking about a number of heavy topics including transmisia, misgendering, misogyny, ableism, Nazi fascism, and child sexual abuse. If our work has helped you, please consider supporting us via Patreon so I can keep the channel running. You can also help us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. I'd just like to take this time to remind our viewers that the statements made throughout our videos are the opinions of myself, the host, based on the evidence I have available to me. They are not and should not be taken as unquestionable fact, which is why we reference everything, because we're fallible. Thus we try to give you, the viewer, the ability to check all evidence yourself in order to make up your own mind, which is what the reference numbers in the top left corner are for, being numbers that match up with the reference list found in the transcript linked down below. As such, we encourage all viewers to do their own research to reach an informed conclusion about the topic. Hi there, mine's Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and today we need to talk about the way in which anti-trans bigots have fully embraced the child sexual abuse machine in their war on trans people. The main subject today is some anti-trans bigot, MaryCate Delvey, a self-described TERFluencer with almost 7,500 followers, including one very sad and lonely Graham Linehan. She's also personal friends with none other than professional Nazi rally organiser Kelly J. Key Minshall. Not only did Delvey buy a bunch of shit from Minshall, but Minshall went so far as to send the TERFluencer a limited edition version of one of the shirts she ordered before the Nazi rally organiser went on to personally reply to Delvey's post after she failed to mention said fact. We have an entire playlist covering Minshall's Nazi rallies across Oceania, not Aotearoa as I incorrectly stated in one of our previous videos, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into that. Fact is, it isn't just Minshall. It's the entire gender-critical movement, what previously called itself the TERF movement before many of them decided that TERF was a slur because of all the fascist and sex abuse scandals surrounding those who self-identified with the label, which is inherently fascist. But it seems that Delvey wasn't all too bothered by said connections, which makes sense in light of today's video. Just know that TERF and gender-critical fascist are the same movement, just at different points in time, so I will be using them interchangeably for the purposes of this video. We also need to be aware of the fact that one of their two fundamental tenets asserts that trans men are vulnerable girls who have, as part of some insidious conspiracy, been misled into believing that they're men as a means to pressure them to undergo chemical and surgical sterilization. This is presented as part of the white supremacist Great Replacement conspiracy, arguing that they need to stop trans men and boys from transitioning in order to preserve their sexual stock and thus save the white race from foreign invaders. Who do they argue is responsible for this sterilization? Why, Jewish people. Because of fucking course they do. As for how they motivate their creepy-ass movement, here is Alison Bailey talking about trans boys at an official LGBT Alliance conference.
Up and down the country and around the world, girls are removing breasts that have never known a lover's caress.
All whilst not a single member of said AstroTurf movement said a damn thing about the unnecessary sexualization of children, because that's how normalized it is. But returning to Delvey, she seems to spend most of her time on Twitter, harassing trans people just trying to live their lives, Behaviour which includes taking photos of them sharing their joy and euphoria, or even looking for support, and ordering GROK to, I guess, digitally detransition them? I'm not sure what the term for this is. It's not exactly something that's been around for long. I've got a few examples to show you exactly what I mean, though don't worry, I will be blocking out the edited image so as to not spread the harm. I more want to focus on Delvey's prompt and subsequent joy, as she does this vile shit before commenting on what that says about her views on consent, and her subsequent empowerment of child sexual abuse. So we have this post by a lovely looking person from October of 2025, absolutely crushing her look, letting the world know that she's happy to have started estrogen and that it's really helped her mental health. So a positive message about her using her bodily autonomy to become a true reflection of who she is, making her happier. And I really get that. Here is me in August, just as I began HRT, and here is me now. Yet this pure display of happiness was just too much for Delvey to handle, leading the vile ghoul to swoop in months later, ordering GROK to masculinize said picture. Delvey then proceeded to sexually harass said complete stranger, making comments of a sexual nature regarding their apparent porn habits in what is a clear attempt at, quote, violating the other person's dignity, creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, and offensive environment for them, end quote. I'd act shocked at this, but the fact is, in my decade of exposing gender-critical fascists, I've never met a transphobe who wasn't a sexual predator on some level, with the vast majority of them specifically being pedophilic shits who are only kept in check most of the time by the combined resistance of numerous human rights organizations. Is a sexual predator might as well be the free square on the TERF bingo card. It's certainly my go-to. Like, this is the exact same thing that Graham Linehan did back in 2024, with the then 56-year-old predator sexually degrading a 17-year-old girl in the street just outside a TERF festival, and yet not one of them stopped him. Let me repeat that. A 56-year-old predator was caught on camera sexually degrading a 17-year-old girl right in front of a TERF event, and not a single one defended said child. In fact, many of them, such as Kate Harris, Fiona McAnea, and Julia Bindel, turned up in court to defend said predator, helping him walk away with a small fine in spite of his actions being caught on film. Sadly, Delvey's predatory and bigoted behaviour doesn't stop at a single post, as seen in this second example, this time going after a person who is very openly trying to boost their own confidence by affirming their beauty after what sounds like some truly horrible experiences. Yet, of course, Delvey can't have that, because if trans people are happy, she might realise just how ugly she's made her life. So she lashed out in jealousy, once again ordering GROK to do the same, before replying with, quote, "Great work! Now he looks like he does more than watch anime porn all day," end quote. Again with these sexual comments about the porn habits of complete strangers. This is not normal behaviour. It's fucking sick when cis men force cis women into discussions like these or make public assumptions and declarations about said women's sexuality, and I'm using sexuality here in the broadest sense. And it being a cis woman who is targeting others, regardless of gender or trans status, doesn't make it any less sickening. I seriously can't wait for the day where society acknowledges this for what it is and stops ignoring it, because currently it's effectively declaring trans people acceptable targets for said sexually abusive behaviour. Because that's what it is. Delvey gets emotional enjoyment out of sexually degrading her victims. She feels empowered by it. But the fact is, even if she didn't keep making weird-ass remarks about other people's porn habits, this would still be sexual harassment because she is passing unwanted remarks about other people's bodies in relation to their gender, their psychological sex. Again, with the purpose of degrading them whilst also seeking to trigger body dysmorphia. There is no difference to what she's doing here and, say, a cis guy passing comments about a cis woman to try and devalue her sense of self-worth for his own enjoyment. These people have the exact same mentality as cis male predators. They've just learned that society will ignore their creepy-ass behaviour because the patriarchy is so far gone in removing autonomy from cis women that many cannot comprehend the fact that they can be just as monstrous and predatory as cis men. And yes, this does apply to every transphobe who passes sexual comments on trans people. Every single one of them is a fucking predator. And I'm looking straight at you, Julia Long. Oh, but it's okay since they only degrade trans women. Julia Long cares when it comes to real women. Except, Julia Long would go on to blame mass rape victim Giselle Pellico, a cis woman, for the violence her husband and the dozens of men he invited inflicted upon her in drugging and raping her for years. It's odd that, isn't it? It's almost like gender-critical fascist violence against trans women will always, inevitably, expand to target all women. It's almost like making terrorizing marginalized people your entire fucking personality rots your core humanity from the inside. But it couldn't be that, could it? Fact is, Delvey wouldn't feel the need to do any of this if she weren't afraid of just how beautiful each of these people were. Even the ones doubting themselves. The fact that she has to go out of her way to call on a child-raping AI to win in the face of trans existence demonstrates just how weak her position is. Not to forget how sad and desperate she is as an individual. Sadly, she can still do a lot of predatory harm due to her desperation, just like your common incel. Delvey continues going after famous trans people, dropping casual slurs, and just being a blight on humanity, all whilst lavishing GROK with praise. But perhaps Delvey's love for GROK is clearer seen in this example, where Delvey asks said child sexual abuse machine to remove the man, and then cheers when the fascist program, trained on fascist data, removes the trans woman. So overjoyed she is, in fact, that she boldly declares that, quote, GROK belongs to the TERFs now, end quote. Which, spoiler, it always did. GROK was invented for lazy-ass transphobic predators. Of course it belongs to lazy-ass transphobic predators. They are the target audience. There was no seizing, no exchange of hands. GROK remains where it always was, in the hands of fascists seeking to further their agenda, no matter the cost. And speaking of those costs and the predatory nature of the TERF movement, it needs to be pointed out that all of the acts we covered today were carried out by Delvey after the 12th of January, which happens to be weeks after GROK was publicly dragged for undressing photos of non-consenting women, and even children. This included Stranger Things actor Nell Fisher, who was as young as 14 in some of the photos. A crime against basic humanity so stark that it drew the immediate attention of several governments. That is the tool Delvey is glorifying here, a tool which, in the exact same way she digitally detransitions trans folk, is also used to undress minors. Yet, just like the TERFs at the Battle of Ideas Festival where Graham Linehan sexually degraded a 17-year-old, Delvey doesn't give a shit. Because this was never about protecting women and certainly never about protecting children. That's just a disguise, a distraction designed to give gender-critical fascists legitimacy They have no right to. I mean, not only do we have Linehan sexually harassing a 17-year-old in full view of the TERF movement with zero challenge, but one of the founders of the modern gender-critical movement, Germaine Greer, published a book titled The Beautiful Boy, which she herself advertised as being, quote, full of pictures of ravishing pre-adult boys with hairless chest, wide apart legs, and slim waists, end quote. She later told another source that a, quote, woman of taste is a pederast, boys rather than men, end quote. And in case you think she didn't realize exactly what she was doing, she stated that, quote, this book is going to get me into a lot of trouble. I'll be called a pedophile after this, end quote. Then we have Nicola Murray, an anti-trans hero whose testimony helped create the 2025 UK Supreme Court ruling, which sought to exclude trans people from public spaces in order to protect women and children. Someone whose case was not only funded in part by gender-critical leader Joanne Kathleen Rowling, but was specifically supported by both Fair Play for Women and Let Women Speak, with Let Women Speak being Kelly J. Key Minshall's organisation, the very same Key Minshall Delvey is buddies with. Nicola Murray is also a convicted child rapist, meaning Delvey's good friend, someone she paid for shitty merchandise, openly supported a convicted child rapist. Of course, I just did a video on the fact that Rowling is in the Epstein files and went over her personal support for known child rapist Donald Trump, as well as her personal connections to many of the other people discussed here. We also discussed the fact that Rowling praised Lolita, a story in which a 38-year-old man kidnaps and rapes a 12-year-old girl, as a, quote, great and tragic love story, end quote. A book which the author himself was very explicit in that it was intended to romanticize child rape, not condemn it, romanticize it. The author was very clear in that he only sought to invoke a sense of ecstasy in his readers as they read what Humbert did to Dolores. We've also covered the fact that Rowling urged her followers to chase women they deem suspicious into bathrooms to take their photos before posting said photos online to track down and potentially destroy their lives. Why? Well, because they might be transgender. The point is, Delvey's creepy-ass behaviour isn't unusual for her ilk. It's the norm. Delvey is part of a wider plague. I guess that's what she meant by TERFluenza. It's not a position, it's a virus. But make no mistake, gender-critical fascist, TERFs, whatever the fuck they want to call themselves this week, are nothing more than a hive of creeps and predators who have co-opted the language of feminism and social justice as a cover for their creepy-ass and predatory behaviour. And Delvey is a succinct reminder of that fact. Because let's stop to consider what she's doing here. She is altering photos of people without their consent in a way that is likely to be psychologically harmful. That is her intended goal. How does that differ from all the people doing the same to adult cis women in undressing them? Note, I am focusing on the adult women here as, of course, there is an additional layer when such violence is targeting children. That said, I don't doubt for a second that Delvey would do this to a child who has socially transitioned. But returning to my question, there's the same basis in each instance. It's entitlement, the belief that Delvey and her friends can do whatever they want to trans people's bodies, just like the patriarchy teaches with regards to women. Delvey doesn't see trans people as people any more than your run-of-the-mill misogynist sees cis women as people. In fact, if anything, she sees us as lower since Delvey is doing this for no other reason than to explicitly torment her victims. She isn't looking to get off sexually, she isn't merely holding on to the systems of power, which, just to be clear, are both absolutely horrific. She just wants to inflict pain for pain's sake, making things even more twisted. I wasn't joking when I called her and her ideology a plague upon humanity. I just hope that society is starting to catch on to their sickening games, and would like to do whatever I can to nudge things in that direction. And if you'd like to help us do that, please consider becoming one of wonderful patrons who make our work possible. It's really important with videos like these. YouTube demonetized our Epstein piece, meaning it made a whopping £5 for 1400 hours of view time, compared to the model video days before, which made £22 on almost half of that. That's the difference. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal or Super Thanks on YouTube. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Flynn, Loombat, Boea, Deborah Goldsmith, Higgins the Seagull, Jackie Sens, Mix Alba, and Peter Cole. And with that, take care, and I'll catch you next time.